I was laid off from Meta in their last round in May, and that's what led me to IJS because I almost had to restart that journey. I think having the Meta brand was extremely helpful because it gave me a little bit of credibility. However, I wasn't getting past recruiter screens, which was shocking to me. Is there potentially an issue around me representing myself and being able to articulate what I bring to the table and possibly finding that fit? I think the first one was my strategy session with Shobhit. That was, I was already like, I was like, oh my God. Because what he made me realize is I would absolutely get rejected for roles which were too junior for me. And I had already, I don't know if it was a confidence issue, whatever it is, I had no awareness of what my level was in the market because I'd been in this process of interviewing, getting a new job, getting a new job, getting a new job. And I had no sense of what the water was and where I stood in that water. I think the second one was my resume sessions with you. Again, I felt like my resume was already in a really, really good place, but it was just even like when you would push around, but what was the impact? But like, why does this matter? It's more about how can you really trust in this process and trust this support system to help you get to where you need to be. And so that's how I describe it. It's you have this great resource. Now put out your asks, be vulnerable, be open on what is going and engage with that process and that community and see where it goes until you win. And I definitely want to say, I think for me, the biggest thing is really just for me to not be alone in this process. And Shobhit always like says this line like on LinkedIn where he's like, why do you have to do it alone?
All right. Well, Neeharika, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us today. I'm so excited to be able to catch up and just hear about your awesome success now being at TikTok for a few weeks and just the tremendous role that you're able to land. I'm just super excited and super proud of like all the hard work that went into that you'd put in and just the outcome that you saw. So I think it would be super valuable for folks watching this just to hear about your experience and learn a little bit about you. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you over the last couple months and would just love for folks to meet you and just hear about your experience. So maybe getting started, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Sam. It's so great to be having this conversation as well. It's been quite a ride. So a little bit about me. I have been a PM for over 7 years and mostly startups. It's been, I was in 3 startups and very diverse industries. So started off in ed tech, then moved into channel marketing, and then was in HR technology. So really always fundamentally using my PM skills and carrying it over into different industries. And then I took a break, went back to do my grad school at NYU Stern. So did my MBA and I joined Meta as a PM. And that was a really, really big deal for me. It was, in some ways joining the big leagues. It's not to say that like my startup experience was not exciting, but it was really interesting to join a really mature product company with such a mature like product playbook, I would say, and looking at what it feels like to build products at scale for like billions of users as opposed to, the struggles of like growing and scaling a startup. And I was laid off from Meta in their last round in May. And that's what led me to IJS because I almost had to restart that journey. I wasn't really expecting to be in that kind of job hunt mode so quickly, but that's where I found myself. So it's a bit of
Thank you for that. And I'm always sorry about layoffs, but I'm glad that it gave us an opportunity to meet and work together. I guess looking back a little bit, if you remember kind of like the early stages of the job search, kind of around layoff time, what did that look like? Maybe what were some challenges you were experiencing? If you remember any frustrations or how you were feeling at the time?
Oh yeah, I distinctly remember. It's quite scarring. So it's definitely going to be in my mind for a really long time. This was the end of May. So June and July, I joined IJS around July, I think end of July. June and July, I actually didn't really kind of take any time off because it was a very scary moment for me. And I really wanted to like jump into it and start applying. And not only was I was actually, I think like there was a bit of a spurt in the beginning where I was getting interviews or like reach outs from recruiters. And that was really great. I think having the Meta brand was extremely helpful because it gave me a little bit of credibility. However, I wasn't getting past recruiter screens,
Hmm.
which was shocking to me. I mean,
Hmm.
like I'm clearly not a new PM in the market. Like I've been at this for several years. And I'd like to think I'm a pretty experienced job hunter as well. And so it was very surprising to me that I wasn't able to. It's one thing to get rejected at a later round, but recruiter screen, and that really scared me. I didn't quite understand what was going on, and for 2 months I kept repeating it, and it was like rejection, 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 and that's when I reached out to IGS. I remember the first kind of conversation to see if this might be a fit, and what came up is really around, is there potentially an issue around me representing myself and
Hmm.
and being able to articulate what I bring to the table, and possibly finding that fit. And so
Hmm.
for me, the biggest challenge was I just didn't know what the next step was. Like
Hmm.
I didn't
Hmm.
know, I literally didn't know where to put my next step in terms of like my job hunting process, other than keep applying and hope
Right.
like for the best. And
Right.
I was like, something needs to change. I clearly don't know what to do next. And I feel like this group will help.
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
that was really the mindset and the state that I was in when I joined, and a little bit of my mindset. I was really sad. I was very frustrated, and I felt very lonely in this
Hmm.
process.
Yeah. No, I mean, what you're describing is so common with people that are in the search, and you're just spinning. You feel like you're spinning the wheels, right? Like, what am I doing? I'm like applying, and then it's not happening, and no one's giving you any feedback, and you don't know what to do any better. And yeah, yeah, we've all been there. So you find IJS, you have the first conversation. I'm curious, what were your first impressions? And be honest, like, did you have any hesitations about joining?
So for me, I just felt like my main question was, I feel like my interview prep, because I had, gotten into Meta, and I'd obviously I was already fairly strong in that regard. I wasn't sure if that was really going to be a value add for me. So there was like I'm like, do I really need this for interview prep? But at the same time, like I said, I really didn't know where to go next. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to try, some.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that was really like the only piece. And at that moment in time, I was like, no, I need a change in strategy. So
Mm-hmm.
actually, I think it was a pretty quick decision for me to do it. I decided pretty much on the same day.
Well, we're glad you joined, and we're glad you decided. And look at you now. So I'm curious if you remember early on, can you speak about maybe some early moments as we started working together? Like, so you're in the program first couple of weeks or whenever, what are some early kind of takeaways that
Yeah. I think the first one was my strategy session with Shobhit.
hmm,
I was already like, I was like, oh my God. Because what he made me realize is I would absolutely get rejected for roles which were too junior for me. And
hmm,
I had already, I don't know if it was a confidence issue, whatever it is, I had no awareness of what my level was in the market, because I'd been in this process of interviewing, getting a new job, getting a new job, getting a new job. And I had no sense of what the water was and where I stood in that water. And
hmm,
that was the first time where he was actually like, this is your experience. And actually, if it's a startup, you should be applying to nothing less than a staff or like a principal. And that was really hard for me to kind of grasp. I was like, really? Like, am I already at that level? He's like, yeah, you kind of are.
hmm,
So even just changing my mindset around what are the opportunities that I'm applying for, I think that was huge. It's not to say that I didn't apply for like PM, like I was still applying for everything, but it was extremely important for me to begin to establish my position and my brand as a
hmm,
PM, not necessarily as relevant for, I think, like the bigger companies, like, with Meta or with TikTok or with Google, like your PM. And then I know internally, like they'll sort of like level you along the way, depending on your experience and your performance. But I think that was really a big aha moment. I think the second one was with my resume sessions with you, again, I felt like my resume was already in a really, really good place, but it was just even like when you would push around, but what was the impact? But like, why does this matter? And I would say it just enabled me to take some of those learnings and reflect that in my interviews as well. So I actually think that the resume in some ways was like fine, because like people would just look at Meta and they'd be like, fine, yeah, I want to speak to her. But the questions and the prompts and the process of kind of going through that cleanup again, it was really helpful in breaking through my recruiter screens, because then I could understand how to position myself, of course, obviously, but secondly, also to hear more clearly what is it that they're looking for and how can I meet them where they're at. So I remember one of the questions that I would ask Shobhit is like, oh, this is what they're kind of asking. Like, do I just like, how do I respond to this? Some generic question. And he'd be like, yeah, like this is what their expectation is. So, try and meet them where they're at. And so some of that work really helped me get past the blocks of getting past recruiter screens. And then after that, it's going through the loop and then it's interviews and all of that, right? So that's a different challenge. But I would say that was my primary blocker. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's interesting how those different exercises really uncover some of these points, right? Like it's like, oh, but it's just the resume, but who's that person behind the resume, and what do they say when you have a opportunity to speak about it for a few minutes and then go into cross-examination and all the stuff, like what does that look like? And oh yeah, and as you said, like, but how does that person sound when they're at a certain level and all of that stuff? So yeah, there's a ton of work you put in there.
I remember with the headline and I was like, is this a little too like happy and like fun and like too, I don't know, reflecting of this personality that you see? And you're like, I think it's great. I think it's really human. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. Oh
So
man, I still remember that.
things, right? Like just the headline, so much conversation about thinking about how you're being represented, especially when it's just a piece of paper and they really don't have all of this in order to gauge. So
yeah. I was going to ask about the story of landing your new gig, but you've already started covering quite a bit of it. I'm wondering if there's any other, in addition to kind of the strategy interviews, any other components that really helped you feel like push your candidacy over the edge?
yeah, like I said, I do feel a little bit around with interview prep. I accessed all of the resources that IJS has around sharpening design and behavioral and all of that. Interestingly, turns out I wasn't very good at behavioral when I came in. And I was like, but I'm great at behavioral. Here was the gap. I'm great at communicating and expressing myself and having tonality and intonation, all of those things. But where I needed to improve was really going from that 90% to that 100%, that last mile, being articulate and sharp within 2 minutes. So just because it's the same thing with design. I remember when I did my first session with Gabor, I was like, Gabor, I'm really rusty. I haven't done this in a year. And then I finished it. He's like, you're not that rusty, but here's 2 or 3 things that you can do to really take it like over the edge, right? And I think as experienced PMs, we underestimate how different the interview process is from actually doing your job. So just because you're a really, really amazing PM, it doesn't mean that you're going to be really sharp at that interviewing muscle. And I think even just polishing and scrubbing, it's an exercise and you kind of have to work at it. So I'm happy that I didn't have to do as much as I did like last year when I was interviewing for Google and Meta, but still having that weekly routine of having coaches, like doing a little bit of this. And it definitely helped me improve a little bit with every single interview that I would go into. With, I mean, of course, like right now we're talking about TikTok, but let's not forget all of the other companies that I went to mid rounds and last rounds. And every week it would sort of like, I felt more confident it would get better. And I definitely want to say, I think for me, the biggest thing outside of some of the things that I've already talked about around strategy and positioning and all of that is really just for me to not be alone in this process. And Shobhit always like says this line like on LinkedIn where he's like, why do you have to do it alone? And I couldn't agree more. Like sometimes it's just psychological safety of being in that Slack group where you have peers and you're able to ask for help. Like I'm interviewing with this company, is there anyone who would like to mock? And I got so much support within this community. And I made so many friends. And especially when I get those rejections, like some of these people would be like, don't worry, like it's gonna be fine. What else can we
Yeah.
do? Like, let's get on it. And that I think people really underestimate. Like, of course, like the skills, the resume, the strategies, it's all there. And
Yeah.
IJS will give you more and above all of that. But I think the mindset part is really something that I really undervalued. When I came in, I was
Hmm.
like, whatever mindset, like fine, I'm good. I'm good. I have a great mindset. I'm a go-getter. but but I was like, no, I think like let's not just underestimate this. Like let's see where it goes. And I think the visualization, like all of those things, I
Hmm.
think it was really helpful
Hmm.
because this journey is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And there's a lot of ebbs and flows. And I'm very emotional. Like whenever there would be a final round of rejection, I'd be like, oh, it's all over. But this is so much effort. It's done. But then that's where your mindset kicks in. And then,
Hmm.
okay, it's on to the next one, right?
Exactly.
And that's where I think you, Shobit, the community was so
Hmm.
important, even if it's like reflecting on that rejection and talking through it in a very,
Hmm.
I won't say dispassionate way. It's a very like empathetic, caring way, but
Yeah.
also in a constructive way,
Right.
uh, was all really great. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What it no, that you're absolutely right. It's such a key point because I don't think when we have early conversations, anyone is like, oh, the mindset work. Like, let's do it, right? I'm here for the mindset. But then as you say, it's like without that muscle, like you can't deliver on your resume. You can't come into an interview and ace a product design. You can't do it. So I'm so glad you brought that up because it's such a huge point. I'm wondering if you like how would you describe IPM? Like what is the intentional job search program in your own words?
I think it is, I know there's so many coaches, but it is your coach, your support system to get you through a challenging moment in your life. Like I think of, when you want to achieve a fitness goal, when you want to achieve other goals, like even in your career,
Mhm.
even if you're not job hunting, right? You want to really learn something and move to the next level. We all lean in for help. And I think that this program is really that community coach, that support system that can really help you get past a really big challenge or achieve that milestone in your life. And I would say that it's not a one size fits all coaching service or like
Mhm.
support system. It's everyone is different. We all have different strengths and weaknesses and different needs. So I think it's yes, the coach is there, but it's also ultimately up to you to lean into the support that's provided and to maximize what is being provided. Because I think sometimes I didn't necessarily sometimes like, so there was an ebb and flow as well where I'm like, okay, what do I
Yeah.
really need? And I think that ultimately you have to help yourself. And that goes with even though
Mhm.
you have like, IJS, it's like an IPM, it's more about how can you really trust in this process and trust this support system to help you
Mhm.
get to where you need to be. And so that's how I describe it.
Yeah.
You have this great resource. Now put out your asks, be vulnerable, be open on what is going, and engage with that process and that community, and see where it goes until you win.
That's
Yes.
amazing. That's such a good summary. Anything else you'd like to share with folks watching the video?
I think I'd just like love to reiterate that this is a very stressful and difficult process. And I know that there's many people actually in IPM that are not necessarily doing this because of they had a layoff and then, they're actually just very happy, they're comfortable, and they want to still job hunt. So I think it's for many different kinds of people. But I think what I'd like to say is, especially for those who are in a stressful situation who are doing this, I think don't underestimate the power of community and having a support system, even if you think you don't need it. And even if, maybe even if it's not IPM, I don't know, I'm just saying, but whatever it is for you, don't do it alone. I would
Mhm.
say that is the biggest takeaway, because it's really hard to assess what is going right, what is going wrong, what might be the next move. And maybe, you don't need this community, and maybe you don't need this support system, but instead of maybe it taking like a year to get to where you need to be, what if you can get there faster and with
Mhm.
less scars on your psyche? So that's what I would say, which is do what's right for you.
Mhm.
Um, and don't do it alone, because you have to emerge like healed also.
Mhm. Absolutely. You have to go on and crush your new role. Thank you so much. This has been super valuable. I know the folks watching this really appreciate just hearing your perspective and seeing what work and mindset that you put in really led to the awesome new role that you're in. So I just wish you all the best, and we'll be super excited and cheering for you, continuing to be your support team as you go forward. Yeah.
100%. And like listeners or people who are outside of this community won't know, but we all have our own support channel with Sam and Shobhit and Alyssa, like all of the coaches, and every time something is happening, I'm like, team, and it really is that, right? And so they've really seen me go through all of the ups and downs and the wins, the failures, and I think that's really special. And sitting here at this moment of a win and being on the other side is and even more special, because you've really seen me go through all of it. And I really want to thank you again, and the entire team, for getting me through.
Awesome. Well, thank you.